You're very
Yeah,
welcome
sure.
to Script to Scory, the podcast series, and both Ross Coleman and myself, Marguerite Tonry, will be hosting this series today. So our main theme of this is to talk about the Irish language between bilingual texts. You write in both English and Irish, but before we even go there, but let's tell people a little bit about you. You're from Sallynoggin in County Dublin, a Dublin man
Already
who
you
ended
know
up
too
in
much.
Clare. Tell us a little bit about a Dublin man who ended up in Clare.
Well, a Dublin man who ended up in Clare went through many places, because the Dublin man who ended in Clare lived in Dublin for 19 or 20 years, where I was reared, and then I worked abroad. I worked in England for a year, where I worked on the building sites and played football. They were my two sources of income. And I then moved on to Europe for about 6 months, and then came back to Ireland. And worked in the local authority. I worked for Dunn Stores for about 8 months, then in their stores department, i.e. carrying boxes. Then I moved on to Dún Laoghaire Corporation, where I was a clerk for a year and a half. But all the time I was saving to get to college. I had got an abysmally bad leaving cert. And anyway, we didn't have the money at home to get to college. So I was working. I worked for 5 years, saved the money, went to college, and I went to Galway actually, because I was too involved in the social activity, social movements in Dublin, and I knew I'd do nothing. So I went to Galway in '75, did my bachelor's there, and then went to the States and did postgrad. Came back here and taught for many years, and I taught at the 3 levels, primary, secondary.
Before you're speeding through your career there. So all I can say is I'm one of 7, so I have 5 brothers and sister, and there's a kind of a pathway there that happens, So they left Ireland, went to England or to the US. And this is a common thing. So we all speak Irish. Well, we don't really speak it. We physically write it in schools. The minute we leave secondary school, we're gone. We go to England or the US. Now, you have an interesting story there. You went to Massachusetts. What happened?
I don't know too much.
You were in Massachusetts, weren't you, for a while? St. Patrick. You went from degrees in education from St. Patrick's College in Dublin and Boston College. When I saw that, I've been through the grounds of Boston College a number of times, not as a student, just as a visitor. Tell us a little bit about, like, a lot of the Irish go to Boston. Tell us about the experience.
They do. A lot of the Irish go to Boston. Unfortunately, very few of the Irish go to Boston College. And I suppose I would never have gone there, except I got a postgraduate scholarship to go there. And I must say, it's a fantastic college. It's one of the great colleges of the United States, really. And I took a postgraduate degree in education of reading there, which in a way was a major mind-blowing experience for me, because I, as a child, had difficulty with reading. I had no interest in reading, insofar as were I to take up a book and begin to read, I would very, very quickly get what was a physical blockage. Everything went black for me. And I knew nothing of why this was. I just thought, I don't have an interest in reading. But here, 25 years or more down the road, I wound up taking this postgraduate degree in education of reading. And I find that I actually had a synaptic difficulty in the brain, and had the option of getting that rectified through surgery, but the implications at the time were too bad, and I didn't go for it. And by that time, I had actually gone through and got a first-class honours degree in Galway, and I had a master's, a strong master's. So I'd managed to work my way around the difficulty of reading. So in my own writing, whether I'm writing in English or Irish, I'm very cognizant of the fact that particularly in a second language, people approach it and they come to it with a bag of things. They come to it very often with a bag of baggage, which is unfortunately there because of historical circumstances. And also that bag of baggage can be nurtured in them sometimes by parents, sometimes inadvertently, and very often, unfortunately, intentionally. by telling a child that this language is no good to them, it's of no use to them. What are you going to do? I had an uncle myself who asked my father, what good is that Irish going to be to him when he grows up? And my father, who was not a schooled man, but he was an intelligent man, he said to him, well, what the hell harm is it going to be to him? And in a way, that too, the Irish language opened wings for me. We had no Irish at home, my brother, my sister, my parents, no Irish. But I just happened to be good at it in primary school. And my parents, they fed everything that we were good at. There were three of us, my brother Peter, my sister Una, and myself. And anything we were good at, they nurtured it. You know, they didn't have the financial wherewithal, but they would encourage you with praise. Never to make you big-headed, but I realized that particularly my mother, who died almost a year ago today.
Oh, sorry.
It will be tomorrow, actually. Yeah, well, thank you. She was a great woman, as and my father, a great man, but they didn't have the wherewithal, the financial wherewithal to develop us. But my mother was fulsome in praise, and she would tell us we were great. She would say, you're a great man, you're a great man. And if you had something you knew, she'd have you share that, and she'd reinforce it by telling you you're a great man. And I'm actually getting a bit emotional now telling this, but
it's a rare thing to find a mother who, like, you know, not all Irish mothers are like that, to believe in their children, to nurture their whatever their strengths are, you know. It's a fantastic thing to have.
It was a fantastic thing. It was a giving, and my father in another way would give, you know. He wasn't demonstrative. He wouldn't give you a hug now or anything. He'd think that very odd, but in his own way, he spared nothing. But I suppose the big marker with them was we grew up in a big local authority housing estate where everyone was the same. No one had anything at the time. You're in the 50s here and into the early 60s. And but what they did do was they respected us as little people, and they nurtured us, and they told us, like my mother and father would tell me that I'd come home. I remember vividly, if you can bear a little story that encapsulates it really, when I was 5 years of age, I was in infants class in Sallynoggin, and we were doing this little rhyme that an awful lot of Irish people would know. You probably know it yourselves. Ross knows it, I'm sure. You know it, Marguerite. Almost everyone in this country went through Love, Ella, Haina Do, Cuscusella, Haina Do, Sul, Bale, whatever. And we went through this, and it was a sort of a very clever way of teaching children the body parts in Irish. But at that time, we were aware of the existence of these airfix aeroplanes, which you could piece together with glue, and they were usually very unusual colors, like red. Everything in that world at that time was black or gray or white. Cars, there was no such thing as a colored car other than black. And now we're back to black, it's the in color. But it was announced anyway that whoever would say this piece of poetry, I suppose, would get this blue airfixed aeroplane. And now we could never dream of having a blue airfixed aeroplane because money was needed for other things, you know. And but I applied myself to this little dawn, and on the appointed day there were 40 something of us in the class, and we all got a go at it, and I got my go and I gave it a welly. And lo and behold, I won the blue airfix aeroplane. Now, this was for something Oscaige. And I came home anyway that day with my blue fix aeroplane, and my parents were looking at it in wonder, couldn't believe this. You know, I don't know whether they were happy or that they got something that they couldn't have, or whether I'd managed to get it. It was a toss-up, I think, but they were terribly proud. And of course, anyone who came into the house had to have Love, Ella inflicted on them, you know, and I obliged with gusto, you know. I love putting energy into things. I just love it. It's the only way to do anything. Otherwise, you can forget it. So everyone was treated to my delivery of Love, Ella. Didn't matter who they were. And no one spared. When the milkman called for the milk bill at the end of the week, he was trapped on the doorstep and had to listen to this. Everyone had to listen. So in a way, that encapsulates how I came to Irish, because no one had Irish in the house. My father had a hateful relationship with Irish because of his schooling, and he came of poor circumstance and struggled with Irish, as an awful lot of Irish people do. But what Irish people forget is that, bad and all as they may perceive a system to be, there's nothing wrong with Irish. It's a fantastic language. It's a brilliant language. I write in 3 languages. They all bring something to the table, something amazing. And Irish, for me, it's so poetic. I could not write in Irish. I just couldn't. English obviously was an obvious gravitation for me. But as the years went on, all sorts of things came the way. Like, I was a handy enough footballer, and I played football, and that was encouraged. And I went on further in my teens and early 20s in football. But Irish was encouraged. My brother, who was very handy, woodwork was encouraged. My sister, who was mathematical, that was encouraged. Now, there was no very obvious outlet for us at the end of the road. You know, this was it was an open field, but we didn't know we were in a field at all. But circumstance presented itself for all of us in time, and we took it mainly through the encouragement of our parents. And so I suppose the reason I'm telling you all this is that Irish was not native to me. It wasn't around me. But what I picked up was encouraged. I wound up of my own volition, but with my parents, obviously with my parents' finances, going to the Gaeltacht and subsequently getting involved in the language movement. And I had crossover elements. I was very involved in social action in Dublin in my teens and into my 20s. And all of these began to cross over the Irish language and social action. And by conviction, I'm a socialist, and quite proud to be. It's not a very fashionable thing now, but I'm not too given to fashion. So all of these elements started to cross over, and all of the strands of my life that I was involved in couldn't but be aware that I was also involved in some other strand. And that there was nothing wrong with Irish, that Irish was in a way, to someone who didn't have it and acquired it, it was so liberating and so fulfilling, and it was a gift. And I often tell groups, like I'm in universities to adults, and I'm around adult groups, and I work with children, small children, middle-range children, teenagers, and I always tell them, if I lost Irish tomorrow, I would rather be dead. I would rather be dead. It is the filler of my soul. It fills my soul in a way that's beyond description. It eludes description, really. I've gone on a fair bit there.
No, you haven't, because it's really important for us to hear that, because there are a lot of people who went through the Irish stream in school. They're speaking English now. They really want to reconnect to the Irish language. Maybe their children are in school now, and they're trying to help them with their Irish homework. Their Gael Scolanas are opening all over the country. There's more and more people wanting to get back to the Irish language, or wanting to send their children through the Irish stream. Yeah. I wonder what pathway is available to adults who have gone through, did the Leaving Cert, did the Irish and the Leaving Cert. How do they? So if they were to pick up one of your books, will they be able to understand it? How do we help them?
Yes,
sorry.
Yes,
sorry. Before you answer that question, I'd just like to say, that I saw a lot of similarities between your story and my story, because I remember when I was in primary school, I loved Irish as a language, and then I went on to say, secondary school, and we had to read all of these books that I couldn't understand. I started to hate the language, and actually, I know I I I I know you've heard this story before, but I think for the purposes of this podcast, I'll repeat it. But I remember one day I was trying to read your book, yeah, and I actually have it here.
Oh, good on you, Russ.
So so that was something that we had to study in school, and no one could really understand it, and we had to use summaries of the text. And I remember one day I was at home and I was trying to read the first page, and it took me half an hour to just.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. But at the end of that half an hour, I thought to myself, this isn't good enough. I want to become more fluent in my native language. So I started treating the language as something more than a school subject. So I started watching TG Cahar and reading the news, and I found that I actually liked Irish as a language, and as you said, it filled my soul. And then I went on to do a degree, and I'm here. So yeah.
I mean, that again encapsulates the whole thing in a way. And thanks Ross for raising the book there for the world to see. Come on, Marguerite, where's your one?
actually, Ross was telling me about GAFA, and we have a book called Binge. It's about addiction that we brought out last year. As a publisher, Lorcan O'Connor is a guy from Salthill here in Galway who wrote it, and it's everybody told me don't read it. It's really dark stuff at times. So, but they obviously didn't know where I came from, but it's one of those stories that was gripping. An addiction story is always gripping because this country is full of addiction. And Ross told me you have to read GAFA, so I'm planning on getting it this week. So I can't wait to read it. I hope I'll be able to read it. I'm planning on reading it.
But the point is, and I mean, Ross highlights how you overcome the difficulty of engaging with language in what you've said, Ross, and coming back to your question then, Marguerite, what people don't realize, I should explain a second. My postgraduate work is in education of reading, but I am a creative writer. I consciously, 29 years ago, threw away all earnings and went writing full time. Everyone told me I was mad, except my mother and my father. They said, if you want to do it, do it. You see, that was them. And so but I'm writing for these different contingents, like when Ross was doing it in college, but the book is not written for schooling or anything. It's written to be read. It's written as a creative piece. But unbeknowingly for a long time, I was bringing the skills acquired in my training as I'm a registered educational reading specialist with the Massachusetts State Board of Education. And I was bringing lots of these skills to bear on what I was writing, so that if someone could come to a book thinking they couldn't manage this, they haven't got Irish. But if you look at sentence structure in Guffa, for instance, Ross, you'll notice there's no big elongated sentence. Everything is succinct. Now, one would think, well, anyone can write that, something succinct. But in fact, you actually have to apply yourself to doing that effectively without thinning the art that is literature. And so it's like a double job. And I do the same thing in English. And all of these books have had success, which means they are read. And a lot of Guffa has sold something like 60,000 copies. 30,000 of them have been read by people who are not in school. You know, these are people who are picking it up in the bookshop and who are able to read it. And what we forget, and this is a long way around to your question, Marguerite, and to the augmentation that Ross has given it, is that we bring a load of ammunition to engaging with Irish, whether we got on well in school or not, whether it was a pleasant experience or not, is, by the way, I'm just enhancing the picture here to make sure I can see warts and all. But whether that's the case, we have a huge innate body of equipment there where the Irish language is concerned. It is impossible not to have absorbed some of it, even if it was badly imparted. And when we come to a piece, if we open ourselves, we can be quite amazed at how much we have. I go into schools and I tell kids who are reluctant, not just reluctant readers, but reluctant readers of anything in Irish, particularly. And I tell them, look, you have so much Irish, you wouldn't believe it. And they all go, no. And I say, yeah. I said, I'm going to take 1 minute. And I say to them, okay, now I says, engage with this because I'm going to show you how much you have. And I say to them, Herdichin. Someone says Spakely, Kadeshin. I say Pion, Kadeshin. I say Phone, Kadeshin. Ain, that's Oli. My Oli. Oli is Ulcawan in Irish, Ulcawan, an owl. And of course, the owl is wise, so I keep him by me here. Anyway, that's Oli. Oli's Kadeshin, Kupan, Kadeshin, Phone, Kadeshin, Lauran. Kadeshin, Uptraka, Kadeshin, Sister. And I'll go on for a minute. I might cover 25, 30 words. They will get every single one of them. I'll make sure to include Winyo, Doris, Orlar. Get the ones that you know they'll know. And were I to go for another minute, they could do the same. Were I to go for 5 minutes, they can do the same. If I go for an hour, they will get every bloody word. And then they'll tell you they've no Irish. What they haven't got is use of Irish. They don't use it. And, you know, don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
But who saw them go gone? Boston China War. You know, I have a great little thing.
You're an inspiration. You're an inspiration to me. I feel like I'm amongst giants here, the two of you.
Oh, no. Well, if you saw the height of me, you wouldn't be calling me a giant. I used to think I was a giant. When I was growing up, people used to say, oh, he's a tall man. I'm 5'11" and a half. But nowadays, that's nothing. You're a dwarf. But look at this. I have this here. Bord na Gaeilge, which was First na Gaeilge's preemptor, some years ago, brought out these beautiful little brass plaques that said they're shaped like a Toblerone bar. And it says, Tá beagán Gaeilge agam. You see? So, but you know, when you have beagán Gaeilge, if you use that beagán Gaeilge, it becomes more an Gaeilge. So in time, you can turn it around and say, Tá Gaeilge agam. And it is only a confidence trick. It's the reality is that we start off in life with no language. By the time we are 4, we have 93% of the structured language we will ever have in our lives. Now, that's an incredible figure. Now, when we start off, we say mama, dada, all this stuff. But then we come to saying ball, give ball, me, give me ball. Yeah, give us the bloody ball, will you? I want to play a game of football. You see? And in no time at all, we have use of language. And the reason we have use of language is that we use language. So if we have all these Irish words that we can identify, but we don't piece them together, it's only because we don't use them. We don't make it. It doesn't matter about making mistakes. You know, anyone who's going to tell you that Tishel Ginnadock isn't right or the Mo Kenealach's wrong needs to be thrown. Oh, never. I won't say it. You know.
Great to hear that. It is great to hear that, because it's often the case that people are afraid. My father's mother had very little English. It was a broken English, you know, which she wasn't.
Where was she from?
She was from a part of Clare Galway in Galway. But they were reared in Irish. Everything was Irish.
Mum took her around there.
Yeah. So it was all the Aran people used to come into town. When they came into town, they had a bar, you know. So they used to come across, and she'd have sandwiches and tea for them. They would all speak Irish in the house, and so they all used to come in from Aran to have a chat with her, you know. Yes. But her husband wouldn't allow Irish to be spoken.
Oh, really?
So whenever my father and whenever he used to go back to Connemara delivering hay, he was a truck driver, go back to Connemara delivering hay, they'd all speak Irish to him. He understood completely what they were saying, but he wouldn't speak it back. But they all knew who he was, so they never spoke English to him.
Yes. Yeah. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah. So it's often, and even today, I've noticed that he watches Glór Tíre. He loves music. Watches Glór Tíre and different things like that. Something on Opry as well. And Daniel O'Donnell is on some Opry thing on.
Oh yeah, I see that program on. Yeah.
And he watches that, but then before he's going to watch it, he gets his cup of tea and he starts talking Irish to you. And after he's watched, he's talking Irish to you. And when he's telling you about it the next morning, he's speaking Irish, telling you. Yes. And it's not completely fluent, but it's the guts of. And sometimes if we just give something, if we have the confidence to give something a try. And I like the fact that I could pick up your book Gaffa and I could relate to it. I could, because it's a topic that's prevalent in Ireland.
It's prevalent, yes.
And I can relate to that. So if I pick up a book in Irish that I can relate to, I'm more likely to finish it.
Of course you are. And the other thing is that we forget that there's a duty on a writer. Some writers almost expect that someone will come along and pick up the book and read it cover to cover. That's an unreasonable expectation. A writer is duty bound to make that book readable and to make it interesting, and not to have any expectation of a reader that isn't reasonable. He is half the formula, he's half the equation here, or she, and the duty on the writer is to see that book to the ultimate point to which the writer can bring it. And that means, yes, writing the story, but also honing the story and also applying oneself to making it the most attractive thing. I never let a book go unless I believe I have done my ultimate with it. And unless I believe a reader will not want to put that book down. You know, I think of things, a bag of books, my books are here behind me in a bag, but like Trumpty Dumpty, because I'm Fallon Moore and Osama Obama, and they're kind of light, but they've got other levels. They're written on different levels. They're written for young teenagers, but they're also written for adults because they deal with political issues, they deal with environmental issues, they deal with the issue of war. I'm working on at the minute called Chronicle Galactica Curiosity, Spluff Splafferty agus Inra Mars. So Spluff Splafferty and an invasion of Mars. And what it really takes on is, okay, here's an adventure story of this young lad who zoomed up out of the back garden, taken off to Mars. And he's up there on Mars years later, and he now is where all the Americans want to go, the Russians want to go, the Chinese want to go. And why do they want to go there? They've made a botch of their own planet. And now they're going to go to Mars, and they're looking to see, are there minerals on Mars? Is there this on Mars? Is there that? And if, by God, if they find out they're there in abundance, and they are, because I actually know a couple of Martians. And you see, so, you know, they're going to that country. And
You're
here.
You're a natural entertainer. I want to read your books.
Yeah, it worked. It worked. Yes, it worked. It's great. This is deadly.
Okay.
You know,
I'm conscious that the time is coming to the end of the podcast, but I want to talk to you again.
Good.
I wonder if it would be possible for us to have a conversation with you again, separate to the podcast, but just a conversation about writing. And I think you have so much to provide. What you said even about an author, that you don't let go of that book until you know, and then for the author to. I always say to the authors that we meet, don't be average when you can be exceptional.
Exactly. That's brilliant.
Push yourself. If that sentence can be said even better again, you have 5 extra words there that can be really toned and bring it into a beautiful sentence.
Yes.
Be exceptional at everything you do.
Exactly. You're dead right. The author has to expend energy. You have no right to expect to have your material attended to. I remember saying, I was doing an interview with, I think it was the, what was that English paper? It's still on the go, The Independent, and John Walsh. And he asked me about, see, I've worked a lot of different jobs in my life, and the longest I've ever been at is writing. And that's 29 years full time now. But he asked me about, he was asking me about, why are you so zippy? I said, look, I've only got one life. I don't see the sense in being dull or in being downplayed. I just want everything to happen if it can happen. And he said to me about the various jobs I had worked. And I said, he said, some of those jobs don't seem very attractive. And I said, no, they're not, but you make them attractive, you know. And in the course of answering him, I said, I've never been a milkman, you know. But I said, if I was a milkman, I said, I would want to deliver milk with gusto, you know. And I said, like, if there was a fence between 2 houses, I'd want to jump over the fence with the bottles of milk in my hand and land them on and jump over the next. You see, so he apparently liked this more than I realized he liked it. And the article, when it came out in The Independent, said, if I was a milkman, I'd deliver milk with gusto. But you see, for me, there's no other way. If I can't do it with gusto, I want to be dead. And when I'm dying, I've one other story I should tell you, but
I can't. I'm going to have to. We've less than a minute left of the recording, and it's going to die on us unless we say goodbye to you properly. So, Ray, I'm going to say goodbye to you. I'd love to talk to you again. Thank you so much for being part of this Script to Story podcast. And Ross, you're wonderful as usual. And thank you for bringing Ray on here and for smooth talking him onto the Tribes Press Script to Story podcast series. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
I really, really appreciate it, Ray.
My pleasure, Marguerite and Ross.
Ma cúpla focal, Guji Law Ella.
Yeah, well, Plain Tango Lumarish.
Slán.